Some backstory. My dad lives near a woodland tract that is perfect for dog walking. And during COVID, he got a dog, which I have not had too much interactions with due to the nearly 2 years of restrictions. The dog can be anxious and worried when she can't find someone she recognizes, so we decided the best way to get her comfortable with me would be to take her for walks along the track. I would let her off the lead, and if she wandered too far, call her name to get her back. It was towards the end of this walk that things started getting creepy very quickly. It's starting to get dark, and we are nearing the end of the track and the beginning of the main road back home. I call the dog back and put her on her lead. All is fine till she is back by my side. Just as I'm leaning down to put her lead on, I hear a noise in the woods. My dad's dog hears it too and nearly sprints after it. I manage to get her on the lead in time and look towards the noise. Then I hear it again, a voice calling my dog's name just as I've been all walk. And I don't just mean saying the same name, I mean trying its hardest to copy my voice. I felt like I completely froze in place. I didn't want to turn my head from the woods in case whoever it was would come running out at me. I was praying I was just hearing things. Then, just like the time before, but this time from a spot closer to us, the voice called for my dog. It was at this point that I grabbed my dog and ran. While this was only a very brief encounter, it's still one of the most terrifying situations I've ever been in. Earlier tonight, I was on my way through Mississippi on Interstate 55. I pulled over at a rest stop just outside of Memphis, Tennessee, because I needed to pee. This time, I had something unusually scary happen. This was around 11:30, so the rest stop was mostly dead aside from truckers pulled into spots sleeping. I've stopped at this one before because it's pretty well lit and has security, which anyone familiar with Memphis knows is a blessing. Now, I'm a pretty big guy, 6'1", 180, yada yada, so I'm not usually intimidated by places like that, but tonight was different. I walked into the bathrooms and things seemed normal, but the handicap stall at the end was closed, which I didn't think too much of at the time. However, after I walked up to the urinal, I started getting a weird feeling in my gut. Kind of like when it's dark outside and you can't really decide if a tree is just a tree or something else, you know? I brushed it off and unzipped to get my business done so I can get back on the road. As I'm standing there, I hear shoes move. That sinking feeling turned into alarm bells almost immediately. I heard the stall door unlock and someone start running. Now, this isn't a big bathroom, so I panic. I turn on my heels as I'm standing and book it for the door as I hear someone behind me running. I didn't stop or turn my head to look or anything. I just ran. I made it back to my car, but didn't see anyone come out of the bathroom while I cranked it and didn't hang around to see if anything else would happen. It may not sound like much, but this was one of the few times I actually felt some deep urge to get the hell out of there. So whoever it was who caught me, quite literally with my cock out, I hope he slipped on my piss. When we were teenagers, my friends and I would go out and explore, do dumb things, basically just be kids. We have a lot of odd experiences and stories that I plan to tell, but this is just one of them. So during the summer when I was 17, me and 3 friends decided to go on a camping trip. I'll call these friends Tia, Jean, and Aria. We didn't want to go to an established campground because we weren't trying to spend a bunch of money, and we just like creepiness overall. Aria lived near woods anyway, so we decided to go deep into those and camp there. We wanted to go for a weekend. A fun thing that we did splurge on was a huge tent that could easily fit 4 of us and probably another person if we tried. Now, the first night was fun and simple. We did the typical roasting marshmallows and told some stories, not exclusively spooky ones, but past experiences too. Tia was the first to turn in, and she did so early because she had been working the night before. Nobody had a problem with it. A few hours later, like 2 a.m., it was only Jean and Aria left awake. I had gone to bed second, but I woke up with Tia shaking me awake and looking distressed. She said something along the lines of hearing jostling outside the tent, but further behind it, not where Aria or Jean would have been. She didn't suspect anything malicious, so I immediately thought it was a bear. This part of the story is a little lost on me as I was half asleep, so I'll just tell it how my friend did. I peeked out of the tent to investigate, as if that would help. The noise was supposedly behind us, and I saw Jean and Arya frozen, scared. They were looking behind the tent. Arya noticed my groggy head emerging from the tent, and she shook her head and put her finger over her mouth, telling me to be quiet. Arya whispered something to Jean, and they both ran into the tent, shaken. This is where I start to wake up a little more. Tia explains her side of the story to them, and they say that they saw a woman in the distance looking at them, but trying not to be seen. Apparently, once she noticed that they had saw her, she took off in the other direction. All of us being scared now, we decided to sleep in shifts. This worked up until Arya's turn, and she passed out. The next morning, when we all stepped out, we decided to look around as a group. We saw nothing out of the ordinary. Being spooked, we all agreed that we didn't want to camp out there anymore, so we decided to just spend the rest of the weekend at Arya's. But as we were emerging from the woods, we saw a middle-aged woman with blonde hair walking down the road. She caught a glimpse of us and quickly turned her head away and started walking faster. We just looked at each other. I think it was me who asked if that's what the woman looked like. Arya and Jean said they couldn't really see the features in the dark, but she was about that height. I just wonder if she had malicious intent or what her point of view was. Either way, I only ever camp in established grounds now. I'm a 17-year-old female. I am a pro non-competitive mountain bike rider and was competing in a 24-hour race in my hometown. It's in a wide canyon and truly lasts 24 hours, so I had my tent packed under my bike, plenty of snacks, water, sleeping bag, and of course my bike. So I'm a non-competitive member of my team. I spend my time taking laps, fundraising for cancer research, and enjoying my time in the race. To the story. I was preparing to stop for the night and unpack my tent on this extended trail near the river. It's maybe 50 feet near a cliff, and it's one of my favorite spots on this trail. I had 3 other teammates behind me who were gradually going to meet up with me. We had lapped different times, so they began later than me. I was busy pitching my tent, getting my food out, ready for my other members to meet up with me when I heard rushing behind me and assumed it was a cyclist coming in fast. I knew there were other cyclists who weren't yet settled in for the night and probably still riding the time trial laps, so I didn't think anything of it. I turned around and nothing. The cyclist would have passed me if it had been going that fast, so I shrugged it off and assumed that there was maybe a cyclist on another path that I heard. Again, 5 minutes later, another whoosh, but instead of a cyclist, a random man came walking out of the brush near my campsite. Not in a jersey, no cyclist bib, nothing. So I knew he wasn't a cyclist. He was in shorts, a t-shirt, with sandals. My first thought was, a hiker? But this location was closed down for the competition. Only cyclists were allowed near here, and plus, why would a hiker be here at 10 p.m. in the pitch black darkness? The man just looks at me for what seems like forever. To say I was afraid to break eye contact was an understatement. We continued to lock eyes until we heard gears of upcoming bike riders, who I later found out were my other riders. Right as my teammates meet up, the man just disappears again, back into the darkness. We didn't see him again. Thankfully, we slept great, but during dinner you can assume we had some crazy stories. Apparently, my other 17-year-old teammate has said that she has seen eyes or some glowing dots in the trees when they passed. They were wearing headlamps, and we have lights on our cycles. The others agreed and said that there was something more than the usual coyotes out there. Overall, fun weekend, and the competition was amazing, but it was a terrifying moment for me and my mates. Edit. Something else that happened that I forgot to mention. After that night, we went to meet back up at the main time stop places. We heard that other riders had experienced the same thing. Glowing eyes, people randomly appearing, hikers being out way later than the trails were supposed to. Someone even mentioned it seemed one person had a gun. Creepy. In the summer of 2019, my partner and I, both early 20s, decided to take a road trip to Vancouver, Canada, and stay at the Golden Ears Provincial Park. We liked camping, had spring break, and wanted to do something different than we did on most of our other vacations. My partner has never been outside the United States, and it seemed like a crazy new experience. It was a 6-day trip with Airbnbs in each state, and the grand finale was a reserved campsite in Golden Ears, and it was close to winter. We packed terribly, had a giant tent, brought a bunch of fruit and veggies to eat healthy, stored them in a cooler that was too small, and brought a cutting board with a knife to break up our snacks while driving. We started in California, switching off driving our red Ford Fiesta. We drove through Oregon and Washington, and we made it to Vancouver. We spent a day or two in each state, drank a little too much, and stayed out late. Canada was the best part, and Illilouette Lake felt like walking in a painting. We walked barefoot on the rocks, with our toes freezing in the cold lake. We hiked around, saw a beautiful waterfall. We saw other couples taking pictures there for an hour, and we started modeling the same poses from far away. Everything was perfect. The campsite was empty, except for another couple. We went to bed early that night. It was quiet, and I woke up to crackling outside our tent. My partner was still asleep and snoring. I didn't think much of it because it was pitch black and probably an animal. Then the crackling continued closer to the tent. I sat up and grabbed my phone. The brightness came on, and I turned it off, almost blinding myself with the light. In those 2 seconds, I could make out a person right next to the tent. I sat up and froze. They weren't moving, and they were close enough to unzip the tent. I started poking my partner because I had no idea what to do. They woke up, and I said that there's someone outside our tent. Then I hear footsteps, quiet footsteps, walking out of our campsite. My partner starts loudly saying, "What?" repeatedly in a sleepy haze. A car or truck is parked right outside our camp area, and it starts to drive off. They didn't turn their lights on until they turned a corner and were out of view, so I couldn't make out much, but it looked like a truck. Now I'm shaking, and my partner can't put together what's happening. I want to leave, but Golden Ears locks their gate until 6 or 7 in the morning, and it was only 1, so we're gonna be here. I make us move to the Ford Fiesta and sleep in the tightly packed car. She falls asleep immediately and thinks I'm just being paranoid. It could have been a park ranger, but it seems too weird of behavior for a park ranger. I sit in there wide awake for 2 hours. The car is locked and I want to sleep but can't. I'm in the passenger seat, my partner is in the driver's seat asleep, and it's 3 a.m. I'm still half awake. I hear a car slowly driving up the road, lights off, as it rounds the corner. It had to be the same truck. I was scared, but my adrenaline was pumping. It slowly rounds the corner and pulls directly in front of our campsite again, in the same spot. I feel like I'm gonna throw up. I had no weapon other than a kitchen knife we had brought for our fruit and vegetables. So I grabbed the knife and tried to make myself look angry, crazy, and big. I sit up in the passenger seat, holding the kitchen knife. I keep it straightened up at eye level and stare deadpan at the truck in the pitch black. The truck stops and turns off. A light directly shining into my face is coming from the truck, and I stare back terrified in my Ford Fiesta, holding the large kitchen knife, not blinking. The truck starts up again and turns on its lights, and they stay on, blinding me. Then the truck pulls out and turns around to go back where they came from. My heart is pounding, and I wake up my partner and say that we need to get the hell out. We pack by just throwing things into the car and sit there awake until 6 a.m. We drove home and don't stop. We keep rehashing and trying to make sense of the situation. We ultimately decide that we both needed some sleep. This happened to a group of friends and I on a camping expedition for an award program. It was the second day, and we were coming to the end of our 6-hour walk. We were walking across a small country road. The nearest house was pretty far behind us and way out of earshot. At the end of this country road was a bridle path that ran perpendicular, probably about 2 miles from the nearby village. As we were approaching this path, an unmarked white van came up the road. but instead of stopping, he pulled up right in front of us. The width of the van was about that of the country road, so we couldn't get past. He rolled down his window and started asking us questions. It wasn't uncommon for locals to ask us questions or give us words of encouragement, but this guy just didn't sit right with me. Being an all-female group, and not to mention, all of us were incredibly exhausted, this was a concern of mine. I brushed it off since it didn't seem to worry anyone else. I figured I just watched too many true crime documentaries. He asked us what we were doing, as many people had, and we explained the award program we were on. His questions began relatively normal and small talkish, but they began to get more specific. "So you're camping out tonight then?" We replied and said that we were, ready for him to drive off so we could continue our route. "Where's your campsite?" This sent shivers down my spine. This may have not been anything sinister, but that was none of his business. I feigned ignorance, as if I didn't know where our campsite was, and gestured vaguely in the opposite direction of the site. Again, I was just expecting him to shrug this off and go about his day, but no. "Surely you must know where your campsite is." This is when one of my friends blurted out the name of our campsite. I froze for a second, but luckily he didn't hear this. He began to ask questions like, "Is it near? Is it that way? What does it look like?" This was far too specific for my liking, so I maintained that I had no idea. Eventually, he began to drive away, looking strangely disappointed without saying anything. We waited until he was a ways down the road before we continued walking, a little shaken. We made it back to our campsite and reported it to the counselor. I didn't get any sleep that night. Maybe I was overreacting, but I dread to think what could have happened. This happened last April. There is a river that runs through my town that everyone likes to hang out on the rocks and the beaches during the warmer months. I, female, 26, went to a more secluded spot, but it's always my go-to. It was completely empty, but luckily, there were a group of girls just on the other side of the beach. So I'm laying there on my stomach with one of my headphones in. I look up and suddenly see a very creepy looking man standing right next to me, less than a foot away. He stared directly at me, and when he sees me notice him, he looks at the group of girls who are watching, and he began to walk away to the path at the top of the beach. I'm terrified at this point and don't let him out of my sight. He stops. On the path, there are some very light bushes between us, and he's whipping out his dick, and what I presume begins to pee while making direct eye contact with me. At this point, I did not want to see his dick, so I looked away and called a friend. I noticed a group of girls looking my way, and when I look back, the guy is gone. I'm scared as heck about what just happened, and the girl hollered at me to see if I was okay. She actually came up to me before she left and asked if I had a friend coming to get me, and gave me her pepper spray. The beach spot requires you to cross the train tracks and walk through paths in the woods. It's easy to get to, but usually visited by people around my age or a little older. He's definitely not a river goer and was very stereotypical creepy. My partner, 22 female, was at a bachelor party at a campground. I was not involved for reasons of being a male. The audacity, I know, but I stayed up late just in case anything happened. She calls me at 12 a.m. panicking, saying, "He was just here," and I had her recount everything after taking a few breaths. So this is her story, not mine, but I was very much involved. After a fun night of drinking, playing video games, hiking, swimming, and deciding to call it a night, we will call my partner Mindy. Mindy decided to finally take a shower after everyone else was turning in, and walked up to the camp bathrooms. She noticed an older white male sitting on the bench, but he doesn't pay her any mind, listening to something on his phone. She assumed that he was waiting for someone, or was just sitting at the bench at night. Campgrounds are full of strange bench sitters. It's one of these time showers where you push a button to get the water to go, so her shower was very short. She had brought her clothes in, so she got dressed. She heard someone else and assumed that another person needed to use the shower. As she opened the curtain, she sees a man peeking into the shower stalls, one at a time. She was the only person in there, and all she could do was stand there, mouth agape, staring at the man. He realized someone was standing there, and when he saw her, his eyes got super wide and he sprinted away. I told her that the ranger or camp staff should be nearby and to let them know immediately or to call the police. But since she was at someone's celebration, she didn't want to disturb anything. I figured that there was some shock and didn't want to raise her anxiety by arguing. Still, neither of us slept that night as I waited for her calls and she waited for the man to break into her tent. She told the ranger the next morning and they said, "We got several reports yesterday about this man, but no one could seem to find him." Flabbergasted that the man had once again caused discomfort. It seems to me that he was trying to muster up the courage to potentially do something worse, and it was a whole day of stalking, hiding, waiting, and sneaking into shower stalls, but that he was still timid. I'm just glad she came home safely, and I really wish I was there because I'm the guy that runs tourist explosions. Literally happened once. It was a cold October night, around 11 p.m. when my buddy and I were cruising and stopped to take a smoke break. We got out of the car in a secluded area in a small village. The place we walked to was next to a dark, running biking track which entered a forest. We sat down on a bench outside the tree line, smoking our special cigarettes under the subtle light of the moon. A remarkable thing about this spot was that it was located in view of the House of Morsall. In 1996, 3 people were brutally murdered in there, and it has been since sealed up. It is known that the interior is untouched since that crime. A documentary was made about this. That's how I know this info. Here's the other thing I know. The 2 murderers are already released from jail, and by the time of the incident, one of them was let go from prison just months before. Back to the bench. After about 10 to 15 minutes, our eyes were able to see better in the dark, and I started looking towards the dark running path that led into the forest. Between the trees, I saw something which I thought was a bag or a mask, or a rope hanging from a branch at eye height. I immediately told my friend and he agreed about the conclusion, but after moving a few steps closer and focusing our eyesight, we saw that it was a grown man with a bag or mask on his head, in the fucking dark. He was standing in some bushes, and we saw the movement of his breathing, and that he was wearing regular boomer clothes. First, we quietly told each other, "What the fuck?" and confirmed that we both saw exactly the same thing. Reminder that this person was standing about 10 meters away from us, and we were there for about 10 to 15 minutes in the pitch darkness. Then we are looking at him, and another minute until I start yelling at him. I just yelled things like, "Hey, come out!" I did this despite being spooked by the strange experience. It's how I am. He raised his hand in a motion of aiming a gun, and we ran back to the car as fast as we could. Looking over our shoulders, we saw that he kept his arm located to us, but couldn't make out if he had an actual gun. After getting the fuck out of there and recollecting, we did realize one more disturbing thing. The guy did not want to mess with 2 young adult males. In the daylight, a lot of people traverse this place by bike or foot, so one of the possibilities is that this crazy man was gonna intercept a lone person in the wrong place at the wrong time.